you are the big banyan tree. In my culture, you would be like the elder, and I'm in the middle, and those children, they are the future. These three generations.
Well, that's very interesting because when I went to India, and I know a little bit about the respective elders in India, where they really do honor, and they
Yes,
touch the feet of the people when they walk into the home of an elder
that's right.
because
That's
they
right.
respect that.
Hmm.
And it's very different in our culture, the American culture anyway, my culture, is that most of the old people are discarded. They're pushed to the side because the technology and the information world is always so much more attractive because movies and excitement and bungee jumping and vitality, that's America in the mind
Well, uh-huh.
of people. And so old people get out of the way because we are doing the marathon and we are playing football and the sports are big and
Forever
it's
young. That's the
forever
idea.
young. Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
have to say, when I first came into the Western world, I had nightmares for 2 weeks, culturally so different. And I just went, these people are insane. I just thought, how could they? I mean, I've always heard and read about, white Western culture, and I came here, yes, with a purpose for sure, to learn, to share, but, whatever. But physically coming here, literally 2 months of weeks of nightmares, what hit me was I couldn't see the elderly people. I couldn't see people who are in need, suffering, the poor, the sick, I mean, the vulnerable. They are simply put away. And it's just all supposed to look like a whole society, a whole nation of people in their 20s, busy with sports and computers and having parties. That kind of idea was such a shock to my system. I couldn't, it wasn't a moral judgment. I just went, it's like, how can you not notice in nature seasons? You know, there are 4 seasons. How can a whole world be created out of springtime or summertime? There's no other seasons.
It's
um,
true.
it's
It's true.
shocking. But I want to say this is one of my interests, of course, and I think we can include this in this conversation, and then we'll keep the other focused one about Adida and Adidam for another one. But in this broad one, is speaking of the 4 seasons, there's 4 stages of life. I'm sure you're familiar with the 4 ashramas in India, we call them. So ashram is spiritual sanctuary or monastery, but there is another understanding of ashrama, and that's the stages of life. So there are 4 stages, and the first one is brahmacharya, second one is grihastha, third one is vanaprastha, and the fourth one is sannyasa. So the first 12 years, up to 20 years, 20 years really in the old days, is of education, preparing young men and women. They go to the wise ones in the community, in the tribe, and that was the traditional way of learning. And they receive not just information and knowledge, they build character. They learn the wisdom from the wise ones. How else are they going to prepare for an adult, responsible, moral, conscious life? Then roughly 20 or 25 up to 50 was grihastha. That means the life of the householder. So one gets married, raises a family, makes contributions to society, very productive, very active, and very involved. And then the third one in traditional Indian understanding, around the age of 50, was vanaprastha, and that means the transition. So that, like, it's a transition, it's not full retirement. And I want to talk about this cultural understanding, such a difference. Even the very term in Western world, when somebody's getting into mature age, we call it retirement, as if useless. Hang on, uh, the Indian term vanaprastha means somebody who has taken the thread. It's a sacred thread. Once one has reached that maturity of life and has fulfilled their responsibilities to society in a very active way, through work, through family, through skills, and they take on this sacred vow of now focusing on their
Yes.
life
So the
wisdom.
first two were the apprenticeship, first 20, 25 years, then the householder, responsible, functional, productive, active member of society, another 20, 25 years. And from age 50, now this is from ancient Indian understanding, so 50 was considered, you know, almost old. No, it's not the case. Nevertheless, so 50 was a transition for 5 or 10 years. By the time one was 60, the final stage of life was sannyasa. So the transition to what? Transition to sannyasa, which means renunciation. A sannyas means a renunciate. So in Western kind of understanding, it would be like a monk or a nun. But in the ancient Vedic times and at the time of the Upanishads, it was slightly different. In later um understanding in the Hindu culture, renunciates became a particular type that's ascetics, uh, usually men, and that were just single. They didn't have wives and children and all of that. But that's the more later development. The more ancient Vedic culture was in some ways more like Native American culture, as in elders, shamans, seers, they were also men who have, or men and women, that have already lived a full life, fully involved, part of the community, and raising a family was a big part of it. In fact, in most of the cases in ancient India as well as Native American culture, uh, somebody in their late 50s, 60s, 70s considered to be a leader, a wise man or woman for the whole tribe. One of their qualifications was that they have lived the family life so that now they can treat the whole tribe as their family. That was the understanding. It
Right.
wasn't ascetical. Anyway, just wanting to say that the broader understanding then of the third and fourth stages uh, of life were a transition where somebody who has lived a rich, full life is transitioning to a time when they're freed up of obligations. So society values them as the elders and receives their life lessons, their wisdom, what they have to pass on. And Native American cultures, or native cultures anyway, as well as ancient Indian culture, their whole frame of um, perception of what a cultural life is was this beautiful thing of a very natural, organic way of the generations passing something on down the line. That the older generation, so those who are in the fourth and final stage, they're handing on to the third is handing on to the second is handing on to the first, so that even though individuals are coming and going through this whole human cycle of experience, at any given time, the tribe holds all of it. In that way, it transcends time. So every time a child is born in a Native American traditional culture or Native Indian, Vedic, Upanishadic time Indian culture, one is not thrown into a vacuum. They're coming into a whole context of life with all its stages. It's like having a farmer plan, or a gardener plan what they're planting or looking after by way of plants, flowers, fruit, within the context of understanding the four seasons. So, just for this round of our conversation, I'm inspired to just look at this primal understanding of four, sacred number, four
Right.
directions, north, south, east, west, four seasons in nature, four stages of life. And then there are four types of people in society. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about the four yugas. In terms of large movement of human time, there is an understanding of four yugas. So I find it fascinating, this combination of these four cardinal points. It gives us a whole compass
Right.
for life. And this is based on ancient wisdom all the cultures, older cultures, have this understanding with slight variations. I'll speak now mostly from the Indian, that's where I come from, but it actually is universal. And so the four types of people now was what technically was called the castes. But that later on became politicized and kind of moral judgment about the different castes and who's controlling who. That's not the original Vedic understanding. The original Vedic understanding was always, their main theme was harmony, balance. As above, so below, four directions, four seasons, four stages of life, and four types of people. Nobody is, you know, it was a vision of equality.
Right.
It's just different functions there are. So there's one body, but there's a head, there are arms, there's the torso, there's the legs. Literally, that's the symbol used in Vedic and Upanishadic literature to describe the four types of people, all of whom in society have a crucial function. So the four types of people now, so I'm moving from the four stages of life. Okay, no, maybe I didn't fully finish the fourth final stage, sannyasa. How is that different from that transition period before that, where gradually one is shedding, like you have, your story. You're a modern day example of somebody who is in that blueprint, that you fulfilled your household obligations or in the middle, and you did it, well, longer than, the ancient Indian understanding of life expectancy. But then you had a transition where you're slowly releasing the obligations and work and all of that. And then finally, 2005, uh, that would be seen as when you have entered the final stage where you are a wanderer. And also, I was just having that beautiful image of you and your wife, I don't know her name yet, traveling in India. That was classic. That's what they did. That was the signal that a person is entering the final stage of life. Is the tribe would do a ceremony for that couple and honor them for all they have done so far, for their family and society and all obligations. Now they're freed up with everybody's blessing, and they go on a pilgrimage. So they go to forests and mountains, they go to ashrams, they go to sacred places, and the tribe waits. And then they come back, and then they share their stories, sitting by the fire. That, this is what we are gathering now, and the tribe then values them for that. And within that phase, there are different nuances of how a sannyas period would look like. It could be a couple that's just in that way focused in life's wisdoms, and they could, well, there wasn't much writing, but they would pass on oral wisdom, traditions, stories that the next generation will keep. Um, and within that general type of sannyas, there were some that would take it on in an extreme form, if you like. Those did sometimes become either ascetic, or even if they did have a wife or a husband, they were more like spiritual friends at that stage. And they maximize all the practices, yoga, meditation, prayer. That's what they do. And then that naturally prepares them for the final transition, which is not a stage of life, but that's the final transition, which is death. And it's beautiful. Sanskrit is the only language in the whole world that for death, instead of something sounding heavy, they've got the word samadhi, the same word that is for realization, enlightenment. Death has the same word as realization, because if a life is rightly lived, fulfilled, rightly understood, then by the time we let go of the body, it's actually a great event, something to celebrate, not something to be afraid of. That's all the wisdom cultures. That it's samadhi. Finally, the limitations of the five senses and the body is released, and traditional understanding, the jivatma, the soul, individual soul, becomes one with, in communion with the Paramatma or the Brahma. So the universal spirit becomes one as the body is shed. That's such a different understanding of death as the end of the summertime. when you cannot party anymore, go shopping anymore, or do a job and be fruitful. Anyway, so that's the four stages of life. Now coming to four types of people. Four types of people are the Indian words Vaiswa. First one is Sudra, then Vaiswa, then Kshatriya, then um, um, Brahmin or Brahman in the actual Sanskrit. Brahman. So these are Sanskrit words. I'll give a quick summary. So the first one is the majority, which is Sudra. Now that was the general masses of people, and I'm describing old Vedic society. So these are the ordinary poor people, mostly peasants, farmers, workers. So the poor and also the vulnerable. That's a better word for it. The masses, but they are the poor and the vulnerable. So they were seen as kind of the children, regardless of their age, in society in terms of their strengths, their ability, their resources. Because they're vulnerable, they were seen as they are the responsibility of the other three. Very different understanding than modern Western understanding. It wasn't even that, towards those, vulnerable people, those at the top, the privileged, would have some kind of welfare system. It's not welfare. It's responsibility that those on the top, they're supposed to take care of the people. That's their role. They're servants. Anyway, so that's the majority of the poor and the vulnerable, Vaiswas, Sudras. Then the one up from that, or rather than hierarchy, the next one is Vaiswa. Vaiswa means merchant. So it doesn't have to be just merchant. It means people who are, have developed some kind of business or a trade. They employ other people. They have some wealth, but they also continually recycle it, get it back into the society. So more people are getting work, more people getting trained, more people have a livelihood and means. So merchant is that class that are handling the main things of economy, money, and benefiting all the other people, the masses. And then the other two are the Kshatriya, which means warrior, and the Brahmin, which means priest or monk. So it would be the shaman, the seer, the elders in Native American understanding. And the third one, the warriors. So each of the tribes, they had to have a class that was warriors. But the warriors not just taking up spears and swords and killing people. It's first understanding was, again, the whole idea was about protection of life and the sacred. That's what the whole idea is about. So Kshatriyas are protectors of the people in times of danger. If another tribe came and attacked and whatever, so they defend themselves. But beyond that, it meant heroes. So it's not just warrior in that sense. So the term Kshatriya really is warrior hero with a hyphen. It's actually not just with battle. It means you do the righteous struggle to uphold the law in the society and protect the whole tribe while upholding the law. So in modern understanding, in modern society, people who are social activists or political leaders, social leaders, community leaders, they would be in this category of Kshatriyas. They do the righteous struggle to keep the law in the community so that there's justice, there's equality, there's help for the needy, all of that, support, protection. And then the most respected class, which would have very few people in it, were the wise ones, the real elders that are specifically serving a spiritual function. So that was the priests, but that then became a priestly class that was not necessarily made up of truly enlightened seers and shamans. It was just a privileged class. Same distortion happened that rather than the morally heroic leaders of different aspects of society, it became soldiers in the Indian army, Kshatriya. Merchant class, rather than the kind of hub of the wheel that keeps all the human basic level survival, food, work, home, all this economy, that was a sacred understanding. Now it's just become consumer understanding of the wealthy people, the big money people, businessmen. There's no depth to that understanding. It's a distortion. And then the masses, which was seen as the bulk of society, who, just like the other three types in society, all were seen as vessels of the divine. We're all the incarnation of the divine. If a community has 1 million people, say in India, a long time ago, the understanding was that the divine being is happening in the form of these 1 million people. They may outwardly seem to be in different conditions and capabilities and situations, but that's not to make discrimination. We see each other all as expressions of the same divine. Therefore, service to each other is service to the divine. This was fundamental understanding. So the other classes, merchant class, warrior class, priestly class, they didn't serve the ordinary poor and vulnerable masses, seeing as, oh, they didn't make it. We made it. We get to rule over them. No, it was service. All of this is divine. We're serving the divine by serving all the different types of conditions people are in. But to each person, we do namaskar. The, whichever social class you are on, equally, I honor the divine in you. And whatever situation I am in, with my physical and financial and social capabilities, it's just, whatever by grace I've received, my job, whatever I have, is to turn it into service for the greater good, wherever I'm situated. So that's very essential in understanding the traditional understanding of a tribe or a culture, a community in balance, and the different function in it, which directly is based on the ancient wisdom of the 4 stages of life, the 4 seasons, the 4 directions. Now, coming to the big picture then, the 4 yugas. This is also ancient Indian understanding in terms of time, that the Western understanding of time is linear. It's a straight line. And usually Western textbooks don't go much past these, Babylonian, Sumerian civilization 6,000 years ago or something. So we know that, and Egypt, and then Greece, Rome, then it travels throughout Europe as the main centers of civilization, then 14th, 15th century, Columbus and the story. So last 600 years, that civilization has become global. For us, Indian background or native cultures, that whole story is like describing a whole day and night, but actually describing the the last 5 minutes. It's tiny, and so it's myopic, like this. You can't see the human journey and experience in the broader context because modern Western civilization, it has no long history. It's a child, So our understanding of time is vast and cyclical. Whether it's Native American or Australian Aboriginal or Indian, it's cyclical and it's vast. So just as a single year has 4 seasons, the bigger cycle of time has 4 yugas. Yuga means age or epoch. So those 4 yugas are Kali, Treta, Dwapara, Satya in Sanskrit. So Kali is the dark age, and dark not because the sun has gone out, but the inner sun, spiritual knowledge, inner knowing, enlightenment, spiritual consciousness, that's been lost. The teachings have been lost. The teachers have been, persecuted, crucified, abandoned. So human society, when it loses that wisdom, then there is chaos upon the earth, exactly how it is now. So modern Western understanding is, that's because of some issues to do with technology, climate change, money, this and that. That's a very materialistic understanding. Ancient Indian understanding is this is just an outer symptom of losing the inner light and honoring those who are awake, the enlightened ones. That when we lose that, there is darkness in society. Everything is out of balance. And the way back is the return of that light. There's no other way. So that return then happens in through the three other yugas. So Treta, well, Kali means that there is like no light, all darkness. Treta means 3/4 darkness, 1/4 light. Means slowly the light is coming back. In terms of people hungry for it, and at least a few wise ones present. So it's a proportion. Then Dwapara means half and half. So 50% of society is asleep, don't value the spiritual wisdom and the wise ones, and half of it does value. So that's Dwapara. I'm giving a very simple summary. And then Satya. Satya means truth. This is the age of truth. In terms of four metals, it will be Kali Yuga is Iron Age. Treta would be bronze. Dwapara is silver. And Sattva, the age of truth, is the golden age, as understood in Western kind of understanding of a golden age. So that comes in that sequence. 4 seasons, 4 directions, 4 stages of life, 4 types of people in society. And then the fifth and final crowning of it is the 4 yugas. That in the darkest time, it's the extreme materialism and the rich and powerful without any moral qualification, any enlightenment, any qualification to lead the people or even protect them. They're in charge. Well, that's pretty much the time we remember in our lifetime. This is the Kali Yuga, but not just that. It's the end of the Kali Yuga, which will be the most exciting part of our conversation in this second recording, is what time are we in? Where are we? So the Dark Age, and then Treta is bronze, and yeah, silver is Dwapara, and Satya Yuga is the Golden Age. So this was the understanding, and because ancient cultures, and specifically India in its most sophisticated expression of these kind of ideas, so their understanding was that there's a physical body that's born, lives 50, 60, 70 years, dies, but there is a greater time cycle that is for the soul, the Jivatma. So for that, time cannot be measured in decades. That's too short. You look at it but in terms of thousands of years. Now this has some correspondence in Western understanding in Greece, and Plato has recorded some of it. His idea was the great year. There's the precession of the equinoxes, the slight wobble of the earth, so that it takes roughly 26,000 years to go through a full wobble, tilt of the axis, such that in the heavens we'll have the same North Pole star in the same position. To come back to that takes 26,000 years. And every 2,200 years, we go through one sign of the zodiac. 12 signs are like 12 months. Every 3 months is a season. It's very sophisticated and very ancient. Like Plato records that he heard about these things through, his teacher and their teacher, and goes back all the way to Pythagoras and Solon, who, they made trips to Egypt and learned from the priesthood of Heliopolis. These ancient wisdoms, they were same over there and in India. So that great year is the understanding of the Yuga cycles, roughly 26,000 years. There are other interpretations where there's like astronomical numbers. I don't go with them. This is the more reliable human scale. Is a great year is 26,000 years, And within that, we have 4 seasons, 12 months. So the Indian understanding then, where are we now, is we are entering the golden age, the Satya Yuga, at the end of a whole cycle, and after Kali is the darkest, so the darkest hour before dawn, that's where we are. And I will go further on to say, actually, this is the dawn. Only the early birds are chirping. Soon everybody will. It'll take just a bit longer. So I'm I'm making a confession, because unlike modern Western scientific philosophical kind of statements about things, it's not about claiming this is it. When I say what I'm saying, this is my experience, my confession, that what I see is we are right at the brink of the age of darkness, and soon, within the next year or two, the long given ancient prophecies of the golden age will be fulfilled. And that is something I will further like to go into, that there are many, many, many prophecies, predictions, traditions, stories handed down from elders, unbroken, whether it were the elders in Pueblo, Native America, Hopi, Navajo, or tribes different in ancient India. Throughout centuries, we have these prophecies that a time will come in this cycle, long cycle, after terrible darkness, terrible signs of natural, social, economic, political, religious, you name it, every aspect, we'll see decay and distraction and horrors. But then the light returns, the wise ones return, and there's a revival. That's where we are. And one of the signs, essential signs, is the return of the wise ones, so that they will come in all the lands, on all 6 continents, over a period of 300 years or so. There are some interpretations, very little bit. Some say 500 years, some say 300 years. That in that whole cycle, 26,000 years, when we come to the last 200-300, that the primary sign, this is the ancient understanding, primary sign we will know that time is approaching is when we will see these enlightened beings, unexplainable, popping up on different lands and calling the people back to the law, the Dharma, the way, and bring back the ancient teachings. And on that basis, society, humanity, the earth itself will be healed, it will be renewed. But very important is that when these enlightened beings come, they are not political leaders. It's not their function to run around in society and try to change society. Society changes when there are the heroes, the servant heroes, warrior hero types. When they recognize these enlightened beings, and it is through their response that society benefits, because the masses cannot directly understand or make use of enlightened beings that are actually like transmitting stations, the big phone towers. We the masses, we can't just stand next to a tower and either hear radio channels or watch TV stations. We need the instruments sitting at home, but we have to tune into those towers. Well, these towers are the enlightened beings, without which society is lost, without direction. But then it's the mechanism of so those enlightened beings, they are the Brahmins, that fourth type. But the third type, the hero type, the scholars and leaders and social activists and all of that, scientists, philosophers, even philosophers. In the original understanding, they were understood as uh, kind of like a very respected level within heroes. There was a distinction made between philosophers and enlightened beings. I think that's important to touch on. That philosophers developed deep knowledge, understanding, did huge amounts of study and all of that. Realizers may not do any of that. They may not read books. They may not repeat philosophies, even though they may, some have done so. But it's not just for that they're valued. Realizers are, I give that modern scientific example, they're transmitting stations. Their vibration is different, very high in terms of their consciousness and their energy. Even if a realizer, like in traditional India, walking down from the Himalayas, they could be naked, they could have long matted hair. They didn't look like normal civilized people or useful in any way. But society valued them because they looked at them and they saw, here is realization alive in a body. It's like a transmitting station. Even if this being doesn't say anything, we just honor him, make a little place for him, and it's the greatest fortune for the leaders of the community from time to time to come sit at this being's feet, receive the transmission of light, of wisdom, of awakening. Many of these realizers didn't even speak. They taught through silence. Like Ramana Maharshi, most of his deepest teachings are actually not in words. You cannot experience it without being in his presence and fall into that profound inner knowing. That's tacit. It's not about words. Words are always secondary teaching, as understood by the Sarmaun Darka. Sarmaun Darka is the original term. In the court of the bees, or the zone of the bees, those who collect the honey. And the original understanding was that the nectar is twofold. One is through the words, and one is in silence. That transmission, that inner ability to grasp by the power of the soul, transmitted to the soul directly by awakened souls, such that then the mental body can rightly understand information. So those are the dual nectar. So coming to the golden age and the signs we waited for the return of the enlightened ones. Then there was a related prophecy. This one, I would say, so the Indian understanding was, at the end of the cycle, the final incarnation of Vishnu. Vishnu is one of their deities. Shiva and Brahma being the other main ones, male deities, and then there are female goddess deities. But the understanding in terms of time cycle was that the golden age will be inaugurated by the 10th and final incarnation of Lord Vishnu. So that final incarnation is not understood as Kalki avatar. That being, when that appearance has happened, is when the law of oneness will return to us. It will become one people, and all the wisdom traditions will make sense as one. All the realizers will be seen as one. It will become universal, and all the ancient prophecies will be fulfilled. And golden age will begin, the renewal begins, the earth will be healed, and so will be the people. And within that, all the traditions will find their true inner deepest meaning fulfilled, not be in conflict. And the Hopi people and Navajo people, they have a prophecy that's called the Whirling Rainbow prophecy. Whirling Rainbow. And the designs they paint in their fabric and other natural materials is a rainbow with four, it's like a swastika, this bent, and it's got the rainbow colors, the whole spectrum, and it's spinning. And the idea is, this is their understanding of the Satya Yuga, that at the end of this dark time, the wise ones come back and then they call the rainbow tribe, that we, human family, all upon the earth, in all the lands, with all our apparent differences, we're one family, just as one pure divine light, fractured into the whole spectrum of the seven colors of the rainbow. And yet, it is that one light. So there is no conflict. There's a dance, there's a whirling. That's what dervishes in the Sufi tradition are contemplating. Whirling, but one light, and yet seven colors, or the rainbow. So that's all the races, all the colors, all the black and white and brown, all the religions, all the philosophies, all the belief systems, all the variations. But instead of a battle, competition for supremacy, survival, suddenly it changes. Only thanks to the return of the wise ones, the awake ones. And when in all the different lands, there's enough people recognizing those enlightened ones and the collective wisdom they uphold, and their shining example of how to live a life of constant, unconditional love and service to all. Then there will be true leadership arising, and then they will serve everybody else. And this coming together on a global scale of the rainbow tribes will be the fulfillment. That's when we recognize, we the ordinary people recognize the golden age has arrived. But those who can recognize who those enlightened beings are have already been receiving that blessing. So you are one of them, I'm one of them. We are the fortunate ones that we have either read books and heard about these wise ones, and in many cases we have had the great fortune to physically go and meet these enlightened beings that are now returning at the completion of the great Yuga cycle. So in terms of specific timing now the 2020, I don't want to take about 2020. It's a crucial year, both Western and Eastern understanding. We can look at it, that 2020 in Western perspective, it just kind of taps into that year of 2020 vision. When we go to an optometrist and they give us that little chart on the wall, if we have 20/20 vision, means normal average vision, then it's balanced, and with both eyes we can read it from whatever it is, 20 feet away or 10 feet away. Clear vision, balanced vision. Well, we have this opportunity this year. There is all this global chaos, crisis going on. Modern people without access to wisdom are getting confused, thrown into more fear, more separation. Their view is the world is getting worse and worse, and we're hoping we can go back to normal, whatever it might be, very limited understanding. Whereas with the ancient understanding, this is a year to celebrate. This is a year to look at the signs in the whole collective human world and on all the lands, that this crisis has the potential to give us new birth. And that this whole crisis is not about a virus, a bug, a disease, and how can we tackle all that with the modern science and technology so we can all live hundreds of years in a physical body and all of it be summertime and we live forever. That naive materialistic idea, if we release that, what this year is about is actually shedding the very foundation, the belief system, the assumptions, the philosophy of modern materialistic culture. We come back to the fundamentals. Who are we? What is life about? What does it mean, this precious opportunity of a life on this earth? How do we live with each other? What are our values? We can go through a total transformation of values. And this is where, Ed, the service you do, I honor it so much because this is what my ancient understanding shows me, that the way forward. Many people are talking about this crisis, global crisis, what's our way out? The answer, I don't know any other website that speaks it than yours, because it's not directly, it's not saying this can gonna fix the pandemic, no. But the pandemic is only an outer symptom of a civilization gone mad. We are
It
sick
is.
inside.
It
So
is.
that sick civilization, what is the cure? Is this wisdom? And this is the time, and I see next year as magical. Next year will be the first year of the golden age. In my understanding of the ancient prophecies and all the signs and that we have been told to watch for, is, well, I was saying in the Indian understanding that the wise ones will come over a period of 300 years or so, but then there will be a completion, somebody who will make all of it fit together. And my confession is that is Adida. That's what me as an Indian left my home, my family, my background, my 15 years of running around holy places in India, trying to be a Buddhist, trying to be a Hindu. I left everything when I came to recognize Adida as the bearer of that universal, all-inclusive teaching and the way of life based on that universal one divine sacred truth and reality, within which all traditions are equally honored, all traditions are equally understood, valued, and likewise all cultures can come together as that rainbow tribe that Native American prophecy understood. Um, so very exciting times. And even though it seems like we're on the brink, I have no doubt we will come back from the brink, because there isn't just the bad news, there is also the good news that over the last 300 years or so, we've had a steady succession of these great wise ones. Yes, most of them in India, because that has been anciently where most of the realizers have appeared. But over the last 300 years, as modern Western science and technology, transport, travel made all the continents interlinked, travel possible, all of that, then very significant happened in the 19th century uh, when Swami Vivekananda was the first Indian sannyasi, not just priest or philosopher or thinker, writer, no, sannyasi, a realizer at the age of 30, got on a ship from Bombay, went to Chicago to the World Parliament of Religions with a few dollars in his pocket that followers gave, and he went, jumped into the unknown. Something shifted in the global grid, a signal that ancient wise ones crossing the distance and coming to modern Western white people who have no access to spiritual wisdom, apart from the limited understanding of Christianity. I'm talking 19th century America, Europe. But since then, there have been at least 50 significant wise ones that came from the east, went to the west, gave teachings, like Trungpa, many. Tibetan, Buddhist, Hindu, mostly those backgrounds. But then there were some that didn't just teach the ancient Hindu, Buddhist, Indian, Tibetan teachings. They saw that their role was to adapt it to modern Western people so that they can live on the basis same truths without officially having to become a Hindu or a Buddhist. So it's a beautiful history of the work that we see, the marriage of the waters. But that has been since I counted from that marker, 1893, Vivekananda's trip to Chicago. So that's what, 127 years. But where are we now? This year, Vision 2020, COVID-19, this and that, I have absolutely no doubt. What is about to happen is none of us can know the details, but a final purge of this globalized materialistic culture, a civilization lost that has lost direction and has no spirit, it will collapse. It is already collapsing. If the more we're in denial that somehow we can fix it, it cannot be fixed. But what can happen is return to wisdom and a transformation of our values. And when that happens, a new global civilization, culture, and pattern will begin, and everything we need is already there. We just didn't look. We were too distracted. Now that a crisis has happened, we will look. And the help we need is already there. It has been given over a period of last 200-300 years, especially 100 years or so, by the wise ones. And they are here to serve all humanity. They don't belong to any one tradition. So we will discover that very soon. Some of us on the path we already have, but there will be a collective awakening to that humanity has to completely turn its direction. And we don't need to make a big, heavy, terrible. This truly, Ed, what excites me, this is the most exciting time when we get to see divine law taking hold upon earth. And on that basis, in our human way of life for the whole rainbow family. And Swami Vivekananda created this one sentence Sanskrit motto for the Ramakrishna order. And it means Atmanang, well, in Sanskrit, Atmanang Moksham Jagat Hitaya Cha. That's the mantra. It means for your own self-realization and the well-being of the entire human world. Jesus was asked, what's the essence of the law? Because the rabbis would say Jewish law, at least 560 rules. You can eat this, you can't eat this. That's when you sleep, you don't sleep. That's when you plant. There are all these details. What's the essence? And what did he say? Love thy Lord, love the God thy Lord with all your heart, all your soul, all your might, and love all others as yourself. Exactly the same as what Vivekananda said. And what did Adidas say? He's always talked about the two callings. These are ancient callings. The first calling is for God realization, self-realization in however way we understand it. And the second calling is for the welfare of the whole human family. So the wise ones have returned over the last 100 years or so in all the lands. It's time now for us to pay attention and come back to the ancient wisdom, our collective inheritance. And in modern culture, people have lost the understanding, but those like myself and others from traditional cultures, and like yourself, that have received, valued that tradition of wisdom, we can put the dots together now, and very soon we will see, after some kind of big global shakeup, we're in a rumbling, there'll be a shakeup, where this whole movie comes to a stop. It cannot continue with the old leaders, old systems, old values. They have to go. We come back to this ancient, not just new, ancient, perennial, Aldous Huxley, the perennial philosophy, wisdom. It's timeless. That wisdom we will receive again, and human society will be built anew. We will have a whole new set of values, and on that basis, systems, and then leaders who uphold those values don't just take over systems and become our tyrannical rulers. They'll be on the job as long as they demonstrate fulfillment of those values. Servants of the people, not leaders in the old kind of way.
Well, I think this is a good place to wind this up because this is a good summary of what we are involved with. And you've given a good, very good summary of the ancient wisdom of what you have been a part of and I have been a student of for many years. So I look forward to talking with you again.
Likewise, wonderful. Sorry, I get carried away, but this is a wonderful time, Ed. And yes, there's all these difficulties and crises. It will play out however it does. But the tradition I come from doesn't just make me worried about when I see the world. It makes me expectant that the crisis is such there has to be a breakthrough. And the great ones, wise ones, and our traditional prophecies have assured us all the help we need is here. We just have to recognize it. That time is close, and in that time, I look forward to uh, doing all kinds of service with you. I see together we can be of great service. We're already doing our kinds of service, but coming together, we can put certain things together.
Well, I would like the dialogue. That would be helpful to the readers and the listeners and the watchers of Beezone because obviously you're a student. You've been uh, a devotee and you've got the rich industry history of India to back your studies, and you've been a student and a person of Western culture, so you know both. And so I think this is a good
Absolutely.
opportunity.
Absolutely. I'll be so delighted. And you have all the means. Thank you for setting all of this up. So you can guide me, and we can have a dialogue on various topics that can be a series that you can post. Many people will enjoy and be
Yeah.
inspired by.
So, what is your schedule? What do you have going on in the next week or two?
Um, my morning is your afternoon. So I think see, one thing might because I don't have a fixed time. I used to in the past when I had fixed our jobs. Now I look after the property as well as I do part-time work in the hills and areas. It is kind of fluid somewhat. So, um, what kind of frequency are you looking at? As in, how often can we do this to start?
I'm in my studio every day, so it doesn't matter. I have my studio. This is my world.
Okay,
So,
great.
you know,
So
you know.
you basically you are available broadly. It's more my availability that can, um, yeah.
So,
Okay,
so why don't we email one another,
yeah,
get a little conversation to go about what direction we want to go into,
yeah.
and then we'll do another video.
Wonderful. And how about next time we delve into the specific Adidam conversation?
I would like that.
Yes, I
Yeah.
would like that as well. And we can talk about the Adidam history. We can talk about everything you've experienced, I've experienced. We can talk about in present time. You and I both are aware of a certain dynamic, a process, a dialogue that has been going on over the last year or 2 years with
Right.
two particular groups having a conversation in their perspectives of where does it stand, the gathering and their work, and is it according to Adidas wishes? If not, what needs to change and how? All
Right.
of that very close to my heart, and I want to fully focus on that in a whole conversation.
Well, I want to thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to our next conversation. And in the meantime, we'll do a email and come up with some
Yes,
more direction.
absolutely. And times also we can about making a day or time we can use the Skype messaging for that.
Okay.
One question I really want to ask, very briefly, just tell me, which year did you go and see Arida?
My first time actually seeing him in person.
Yeah,
In person was The Love of the God Man in 1983. 84.
84. Okay. Was that the only time while he was alive that you saw him?
Oh, no, no,
You've seen many
no.
times later.
Many, 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 many times through the
Wh-
80s and the 90s. The last time was
Yeah,
2006. 2006.
in Lake County, Mountain Retention.
Right,
Ah, I see. Yeah, end of 2005, early 2006. That was his last trip.
right.
And then how about Fiji, the sanctuary there? Have you been there?
I've been there one time in 2000 and
15, 15, I believe.
I think 2015.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was invited because of my work with the Beezone. I wasn't a student, which is rare to
yeah,
go to the island without being a student, but because of my work on the Beezone, I was invited um, to the island and to work with some of the editors and people in Singapore and other people there and see what we could do together.
yeah. Wonderful. So, as in present time, you're still in the category of a friend of Aridam. You're not formally any
I'm not.
position.
I'm not formally a student. I have constant negotiations and talks with legal people on copyright issues.
Uh-huh,
So
of
I'm.
course. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So I'm presently in conversation, legal. I mean, formal conversations with legal and
Hmm.
cultural of
Hmm.
Samraj,
Yes.
and that's an ongoing conversation all the time. I have a formal legal agreement that we
Hmm.
work from, so that was established a couple of years ago.
Mm.
Um, but I speak to many people in the community and outside the community. Um, Many people. I stay in touch with a lot of people.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to that conversation where we'll go deeper into all of that. And just as I hope these two conversations we just recorded today can go, to a wider audience in terms of whoever, is interested in the wisdom cultures and traditions and, you know, understanding, society wherever.
Well, what I'll do, I'll take it. I might edit it a little bit,
Yes, yes,
and
of
then
course.
then I'll send it to you and get
Yeah,
you to take a look at it, and then we can put it on the web.
wonderful. Thank you. And then the next one we'll do specific to Aridam, and that, well, anybody interested in Aridam, even not formal, can enjoy. But I would hope that that would specifically be helpful for a certain number of people within the formal community of Aridam, where we can have a free dialogue. One thing
Right.
is we are not directly involved with trying to be something within institution or anything. We're just coming from the truth and the
Yeah.
flowering of truth.
Right.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste.
I am so happy and so grateful. And I thank you so much. In my culture, I would call you Uncle Ed. That actually is what we do. Somebody with one generation apart, when somebody recognizes someone as an elder, I say, Uncle Ed. And we also add a G in the end, J-I. You're familiar with that. So it will have to be Ed G
Yes.
or Shri G. I love you. I
Same here.
deeply honor you. And I'm so delighted we connected today. And I look forward to our ongoing conversation and our service for the greater good.
Yeah, that's the main point.
Delighted. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.